Alright, so Brant's placement on the Wuthering Waves Prydwen tier list has been a bit controversial for some people, and I was recently contacted by the main person that runs the Prydwen Wuthering Waves tier list. In my last video, I decided to tell you guys, hey, let me know if there's any feedback you want to give to them because I could relay the message, and that's exactly what I did regarding Brant. So I decided to share some of that information with you guys. It was a bit of a yap fest, so I will show some screenshots, but I will also be paraphrasing along the way. And just so you guys are aware, Sweat is the person that I spoke to, and if you guys recognize who Sweat is or already knew who Sweat was, just so that you guys are aware, they recently changed their profile picture. I swear to God, it's not an impersonator, this is the real person. So let's get right into it. But first, if you like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help out, and we're on that push towards 10K, which will be the first milestone for the channel. So I'll just let you guys know exactly how I opened up the conversation to them about Brant. I was going to ask what your thoughts are on player feedback with Brant and Wuthering Waves. I've been getting a lot of criticism on the placement. I personally understand why he was placed in Tier 1 because it's based on his non-signature weapon performance, which a lot of people seem to be ignoring for some reason, but the criticism I thought worth bringing up was that maybe he deserves an expert tag like Chang Li, because when played at high level he performs much better. I felt like that was a pretty fair critique, but I was curious what your thoughts are on him post-launch. This ended up being a great question to ask them because we not only got clarification on Brant, we also got clarification on the expert tag and what it really means to Prydwen, as well as how they generally run the site and why the tier list is made the way that it is made. Now, I wanted to go over something important that they ended up saying about the Prydwen website itself, just for some clarification in case you guys weren't aware of this. Now, this comes from a conversation we were having about a signature weapon for Brant that obviously drastically boosts his damage output. If you have his signature, you can consider him tier 0.5, but we aren't ever grading based on signature weapons, for the simple reason that Prydwen as a website is meant to guide new players who are casual. That means considering lower levels of vertical investment, that being S0, R0, which is clearly stated on their character icon. Whereas in the review for Brant and pros and cons for Brant, you'll see I have written his signature weapon drastically boosts his performance. Now that's important because the important part I wanted to mention here is that Prydwen as a website is meant to guide new players who are casual. That means lower levels of vertical investment. And I think that's important to mention, right? Because Prydwen starts off at a casual baseline and then they move up from there. Now, they don't go too far because something to be aware of is that when you're speed running in this game, if you're playing like a 1% player or a 0.01% player, super high skill level, super amazing relics you've probably never even seen before, okay? Most of you guys aren't going to be playing at this level. You can basically clear super duper quickly with literally any character. When you're speed running at a super duper high level, playing super optimally, everything is perfect, you're doing rotations that other people haven't even seen before, that is not what Prydwen is based on. Now, most of you guys might not be playing like that anyway. Let's just be honest here. There's a reason why it's called like the 1% of players, right? Because 99% of the rest of the player base aren't playing like that. But some of you guys might be quick swapping. Some of you guys might be taking your gameplay to the next level. You might have super duper cracked echoes, etc., etc. And so you might be able to perform at a really high level, making your Brant seem like he should be higher, even at S0, R0. Prydwen does not base their tier list essentially off of speed running. They base it off of a generally casual level at the start, and they step it up a little bit beyond that. Now, the expert tag might confuse some people because they see the word expert and they think, oh, that must be like the highest level of gameplay. But that's not what the expert tag actually means. It's just a step in a different direction, optimizing a bit more potentially than what a baseline gameplay or team building would be. And something important that Sweat also brought up is when you look at speedruns, they perform like stupidly good under the right conditions. That's basically they're good at meeting HP thresholds and quick swapping at hyper-specific team contexts, something the expert tag doesn't cover, as it's not a speedrun tag. If we were to give Brant a an expert tag, then following the logic to keep the tier list consistent, we'd have to give it to like a majority of the tier list an expert tag, which defeats the point, and I'd say this is probably the main issue, just a misunderstanding on what the expert tag is. What they're essentially saying here is that certain characters that do have the expert tag it can be played in more than one team composition with that type of gameplay. And there's more than just a very specific type of team that they could work with. Brant, unfortunately, is a bit niche in his most optimal gameplay, so that's one reason why they don't want to give him an expert tag, because it isn't fair to the dude. Someone like Chang Li does have a lot more options at a really high level. Giving her the expert tag makes sense. And I think that whole expert tag thing has been getting a lot of people generally confused, because they think they see expert tag and they mean, oh, if I just play well, then I could be like a tier 0 character player. But that's not necessarily what that means. Now, Brant's placement as far as S0R0 is concerned, why he was placed in tier 1 versus something like tier 0.5, etc. I do have permission to share some DMs, etc., with you guys, but I'm not trying to leak the entire conversation, you know what I mean? Especially because we were yapping so much. But here's a quote from them, right? Here's a quote from Sweat. So in an effective sense, Brant can be viewed as hyper-specific to Chang Li, the same way Rochia is, because while she has Havoc Rover, that is quite frankly not that relevant when alternatives are so comparable to you / even perform in some scenarios. To me, this can only warrant tier 1, and it can't warrant an expert tag. It factually is what it is when it comes to Tower of Adversity. If you have his signature, you can consider him tier 0.5. Now, that's because his signature provides such an insane amount of damage. And something funny that I noticed when people were criticizing Brant's placement at tier 1 is that a lot of those people have his signature weapon, which is not what the tier list was based on. At a more casual level, or I guess you could say casual plus level for those that take a little bit of a step up from a casual level, Brant without his signature is it's simply a different character. It even requires you to have to potentially change your entire build for the guy because you lack the stats and things that you get from that weapon, as well as a bunch of the damage. I mean, this 40% damage doesn't just fall out of the sky, guys. It doesn't, okay? This is quite literally the biggest shift in damage for any character in the entire game. Okay, look at that. That's 38%, right? Let's take a look at some other characters here. Okay, let's take a look at what? Jinxie, okay? This has been a big popular character for a super long time. What is that? 18%. Okay, 18%. That's less than half, bro. Let's go ahead and take a look at another character here. Camellia. Let's take a look at Camellia, another popular character, right? That is 16% at R1, right? At R1, 16%. Let's take a look at Carlotta, super duper hype character. A lot of people have this character. 17%. Okay, let's look at the next biggest change out of a 5-star character that we have. That's a Yinlin. 23.60%. This is huge. This is an astronomical amount of damage. People have been talking about the difference of quality and damage of the character when she has her signature or not since literally the launch of the game. And Brant shits on this. He shits on this all day long. This guy is pooping up a storm on the power difference between Yinlin's weapon and his. The part that sucks about this, unfortunately, is that his weapon basically only works on him right now. Maybe some other character down the line can use this weapon, but he's basically the only one that can really truly utilize it to its fullest right now, making it such a powerful power spike for the character. But unfortunately, it's not necessarily the biggest power spike for your account, because a lot of these other weapons that were mentioned could be used on other characters. You can use Yinlin's weapon on a bunch of other characters, right? You can use, even Jian's weapon on other, broadsword characters, right? You can use these weapons on other characters. Unfortunately, Brant's weapon just doesn't really work on a lot of other characters. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great pull if you really want to invest into Brant, but it's not necessarily the best pull for your account. Just wanted to point that out. And the other more important thing that I needed to mention is that, bro, look at what this says. This literally says meta characters. Tier 1 is just fine, okay? This is a great place to be if you're a character in this game. Just because he's not literally one of the best literally doesn't mean he's bad. And by the way, when he has his weapons, he is an Apex character. He is one of the best in the game when he has his signature. Without his signature, you better be one of the best players in the game to be able to make up for that lack of power output. But honestly, if you're playing at that level anyway, if you're that sweaty of a player, you probably pulled his weapon anyway. And if you have his signature weapon, you can basically just ignore that tier 1 placement because you have one of the best characters in the whole entire game now, straight up, and he's super duper reliable. He brings you so much utility. He's trying to do so much, and he does a great job of it. Now, this next part here is honestly just a flex on you hoes, because I was a bit low on pulls. I took a little bit of a hiatus there for a minute, so I was a little bit lower. Last weapon I pulled was over here for Camellia, the Red Spring, and I don't know if you guys noticed just now, but I was sitting right here, essentially. Like, I didn't have, like, any pulls. This is where I would have been, right? I did a 1, that's 5, 2, yeah. Yeah, I broke the game. I pulled it on like I think that was my first 10 pull, dog, straight up. I happened to have some of these forging tides and I ripped it, and man, that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Now, we did go over this earlier, but let's go over it to just clarify this whole expert tag thing here, right? It says on the website, character can be considered one placement higher than their default tier list ranking. Now, obviously, if it says expert +2, they mean it can go up 2 slots instead of 1. But has an optimal playstyle that needs to be mastered to qualify for that higher rating. Characters only obtain this tag if the expert style creates a significant discrepancy in power compared to their baseline playstyle, more so the characters without the tag. Now, this is probably why it's a little bit confusing for some people, because although this does say that you need to play at a more optimal level, this is not quite the same as speedrunning. Speedrunning or a speedrun tag would be something completely different than an expert tag. You can consider the expert tag as a high-level gameplay, but the speedrun tag, which they don't have on the site because they don't cater to that type of gameplay, is something that is so crazy high-level compared to a casual perspective that it's literally considered something like the 1% of players, right? And most of you guys aren't the 1% of players, to be fair. Now, many of you guys probably can play at the expert tag level, but not necessarily all of you will be able to reach like the speedrun level, which they don't even offer like information on here on this site, because that is genuinely a very small niche group of players that could even do that. Now, as a little gift for those that have actually stayed till the end and have actually been super cool about that, I wanted to give you a little bit of a spoiler, but not too much of a spoiler. I have been talking about doing a Wuthering Waves tier list coverage video. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. This was originally added on the 6th of this month. It is now the 15th. By the time you guys see this video, it might be the 16th, so only like 10 days ago. But they wanted to update the Wuthering Waves tier list, and it is going to be based on Brant's impact in this game mode, because he does make a big impact on this game mode, and he'll be changing placement, as well as another character on the list will be changing placement. They could have other placement changes as well, but I just wanted to give you a little heads up, a little sneak peek that when this update drops, we'll be doing a video. So get excited for those Brant enjoyers out there. He will be, making a fun little impact on this list. So I hope that was able to sort of clarify a few things with Brant, as well as potentially other characters on this list. Even I was a little bit skeptical of his placement. However, when you consider him at S0R0, it makes sense. When he has his signature weapon, he's just a completely different character, performing at a much, much higher level up here. Now, let me know if you guys had any other feedback you wanted to give me about not just Brant, any other character on this list, and if it feels important enough, I will relay the message over to Sweat and try to keep a good conversation going with them, because it is important to keep the conversation going and critique each other so that we can continue to try to put forth good information. If you guys like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.